everyone, and welcome to a new video that is a bit different for this channel because it's all about making masks to help with the COVID-19 pandemic that is currently happening. In this video, I'll be showing you how I'm making these masks, and there will be a timestamp on screen you can skip to if that's all that interests you. But I'm mainly making this video to spread awareness that this is something you can do and to dispel some of the myths about masks that I've seen directed towards people constructing them. To be clear, I'm not a medical professional by any means, way, shape, or form. I'm just going off of the research that I've done over the past week. So first of all, you might be wondering why I'm making these masks, and the answer to that is simply because a lot of medical centers and essential businesses are dealing with a major shortage of them. People, including healthcare staff, are sometimes being forced to use the same typically disposable mask for hours, if not days on end, to help conserve limited stock. Though a cloth or cotton mask isn't as effective as a respirator or surgical mask, it can be used to help extend the life of those medical-grade masks. They can also be worn in lower-risk situations, freeing up medical-grade supplies so they can be used where they're needed most. Cloth and cotton masks aren't finely woven enough to filter out virus particles like COVID-19, so wearing one won't prevent you from getting it. However, if you do choose to wear one, it can discourage you from touching your face, interacting with people, and serve as a physical reminder to be cautious in public spaces. They also help prevent the spread of COVID-19 by trapping saliva and preventing it from transferring to surfaces. In medical situations, they are definitely a last resort. I mean, in most situations, they're last resort. But as we've already established, a clean cotton mask is better than not having a mask at all, which is a reality we may be facing in the very near future. So for those reasons, I've decided to donate my time and a few dozen yards of fabric towards making these. I will link a site down below where you can submit already completed masks and be matched with the facility in need. They also have a form you can fill out to request masks and a document with patterns and fabric recommendations for constructing them. I would also encourage you to reach out to local essential businesses, hospitals, senior centers, cancer centers, vet clinics, or anywhere you can think of where they might be helpful. Ask if they are in need of cloth masks and if they have any specifications. Some places are only accepting donations following a specific pattern, masks with filter pockets, or masks made from a certain number of layers of fabric. That's why the tutorial element of this video is last, because it won't necessarily be helpful depending on the restrictions of local facilities. Also, please don't put yourself or store employees at risk to make these. Practice social distancing, and if you want to make them but don't have the materials on hand, you can always order them online. I also want to say that I'm not making this video to shame anyone, just to spread awareness. If you don't have the time, fabric, or funds to spare to construct these, that is totally okay. And if you don't personally believe it is your responsibility to make these, that's also okay. I just ask that you refrain from discouraging other people, because these do help and there are facilities in need of them. And if someone wants to make them, that's pretty freaking awesome. And it makes me sad to know that they might get negative comments for doing so. Now I'll quickly show you how I've been constructing these and the pattern that I'm using. The pattern I'm following is a simplified version of a pattern called a mask for a nurse by a nurse, which will be linked down below. My alterations included removing a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the side and top edges, allowing me to skip the step where they are trimmed down later on, and saving time, allowing me to construct more masks. I also marked the pleats more clearly and cut the pattern from a cereal box so it's thicker and easier to trace around. Then I made another template with the same outer dimensions as the first, but this one does not have the pleats marked, and instead has cutouts where the top and bottom darts are. I'm laying my fabric out so it's 4 layers thick. This allows me to cut out enough fabric for 2 masks at a time. Then I'm positioning my pattern on the horizontal grain line of the fabric and tracing around it with a permanent marker. I'm also making little ticks on the fabric where the pleats are marked on the pattern. Then I'm moving my template over so the straight edge is a 1/4 inch away from the first and tracing it around it again, and repeating this until I run out of fabric. The fabric in question that I'm using is a quilting cotton. Each mask will be made from 2 layers, but my first batch of masks were made from 1 layer of flannel and 1 layer of cotton. I've seen some people using vacuum filters, tissues, and fusible interfacing between the layers to improve filtration, but I've opted to keep them as simple as possible with hopes they'll be the most versatile. Remember to add a few pins inside the markings of each mask to prevent the layers from separating or shifting when you cut them out, which is the next step. I'm following the top and bottom outline of each mask really closely when cutting these pieces out, but leaving 1/8 of an inch of excess at either flat side. After all the masks are cut out, I'm going back through and using my scissors to clip 1/4 inch notches at each marking, indicating the pleat placement, and trimming the excess fabric from the straight edges. Since I was cutting out multiple masks worth of fabric at a time and then pinning those layers together to prevent them from shifting when cutting, I now had to go through and remove all of those pins and then repin the masks so they were just 2 layers of fabric thick. These 2 layers can now be machine basted together at the top and bottom edges, and by machine basting I mean sewing across these edges with a really long stitch length. When the layers are sewn together, I'm taking the masks back to my table and using the template with the dart cutouts to trace the dart placement onto the back of each mask. Now I'm pleating the sides of the mask, starting with the top notch and folding the fabric at that point and pulling it until it touches the next notch, then pinning it in place. Now I'm folding at the next notch so it touches the next notch and pinning that in place too. This is repeated once more, then on the other side. The finished result should be 3 knife pleats on each side of the mask, pleated so they are going towards the bottom edge. Now I'm machine basting across the sides of the mask, securing the pleats in place so the pins can be removed. To press the pleats, I'm pulling tightly on both sides of the mask. The tension on the fabric should naturally cause 3 horizontal pleats to form across the mask. Then these can be ironed in place. Now the mask is folded in half so the right sides are facing each other and the darts can be sewn. The seam allowance for each dart can be left as is and folded to the side before binding, or trimmed down to 1/4 inch with pinking shears. I'm using 1/2 inch wide double fold bias binding, I'll have a tutorial on how to make it linked down below, to finish the sides of the mask. One edge is seamed to the wrong side of the mask, then the binding is folded over the raw edges of the mask and top stitched from the right side of the mask. The ties can be created from double fold bias tape as well, or 1 inch wide twill tape. Regardless of which one you're using, you'll need 2 40-inch lengths of it per mask. The center point of the tie material should be aligned with the darts sewn in the mask, also known as the center front of the mask itself. If you're using bias binding, it can be folded open and seamed to the edges of the mask. If you're using twill tape, it can be top stitched a 1/2 inch away from the edge of the mask. Now you should have about 15 inches of tape extending past the mask on either side. Fold the tapes in half, then top stitch the edges of the tape together so it's half its original width. Fold the tape over the raw edge of the mask and top stitch this edge down as well. Then carry on stitching until you reach the end of the opposite side of the tie. Repeat for the bottom edge, and this process is the same whether using bias binding or twill tape. Then, if your ties appear to be fraying, backstitch across them and trim the excess beyond the stitching with pinking shears, or you can tie the ends into a knot. Now your masks are done, and this may seem like a lot of steps, but I promise they aren't that hard to make, especially in batches. I made 30 on day 1 and have cut out more than 200 in the days following. Once the rest of my supplies arrive, I hope to complete 500. I'd encourage you to set yourself a goal as well, whether it's 5 or 50, it can really make a difference. So that is the process, and I think that's everything I want to share in this video. I know for me personally, making these has helped curb my anxiety. I feel so awful for the people who have been impacted by this pandemic, for the people who've lost their jobs and family members and their health. I will cry if I talk more about it because it's just so terrible and there isn't anything I can do to fix it. But I can make masks and I can encourage other people to make them too. And it's not a lot, but it's something that I can do. So I'm going to. And on that note, I hope you're okay. I hope mentally and physically you're healthy and that you stay that way and that you have financial stability and a warm place to sleep and a good meal to eat. And if you don't have those things, then I wish you all the luck in the world in finding them. No one deserves what is happening right now, and my heart goes out to all of you, and I will talk to all of you very soon.